For children to be motivated in the right direction, they have to believe that they matter. Motivated in the right direction. Everybody's always motivated, but a child can be motivated to earn a C or an A.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So, Dr. Kathy, today in the Celebrate Kids podcast, in our daily segment, Facing the Dark, I want to look a little bit at some different things that parents are experiencing and pressured into, especially as kids go back to school. I think that many parents feel the urge more than ever to have book tutors and add different math lessons and squeeze in more time after school for after school activities, just in case, because there's an impulse that many of us feel to really have our kids be high achieving kids. And Jennifer Wallace wrote about this recently at CNBC, where she talks about in her 6 years of researching hundreds of high achieving kids, and she has some criteria for that. She found that the real engine behind long term success for kids is believing that your worth comes from your inherent value and your ability to make a positive impact in the world. She calls it a mattering mindset. Now, before we jump into Jennifer's thoughts on this, I kind of want to hear your comments on this, especially because as a parent, I really I don't know if it would be relate to or wrestle with this
Mm.
push to always have high achieving kids. I feel like you know, it's kind of like I don't know if you know about the Lake Wobegon kind of radio show where the men are good looking and the women are above average, or the men are good looking, the women are strong, and the all the kids are above average. There's kind of this attitude, I think, in many parents to really have high achieving kids, and it's expected that all of our kids would be high achieving. What do you make of this? And give me some pictures on maybe how parents should think about this, especially as we start going back to school.
My passion for children, Wayne, is that they become who they were created to be. And that I'll tell students anywhere I go that if your B is your A, we want to celebrate the B. But if you could have earned an A, then I would recommend you earn the A because it's appropriate to learn to be diligent and persevering and to, do your best. And kids will say, "But Dr. Kathy, how do I know if I've done my best?" So that's a whole nother conversation. But I think, expecting kids to do their best to become who God created them to be would be the passion that I would have. It's not realistic to think that all kids are going to be above average. Hello, average. I mean, that's just nonsense. And is God a great creator? Absolutely. And does he give challenges both to children and parents and to family units? Yes, he chooses to do that. So, what I have found, Wayne, in our work is that when a parent demands much from children, it's often because much was demanded of them, or they regret that much wasn't demanded of them and they feel like they didn't achieve what they could have achieved because maybe they had overwhelmed moms who weren't able to bring out their best. So oftentimes it's apparent and it's a warped perspective that maybe some of our listeners need to reflect on.
Wow, Dr. Kathy, that's a little bit heavy, and I'm
It
okay with
is.
that. But I want to shift gears a little bit because I want to get to her concept, this idea of a mattering mindset that Jennifer writes about. What do you make of that idea and how she kind of describes it here inside of the article?
Yeah, I'll go on record to say that I actually do love this, and for believers, yes, we matter. God made people because he had so much love to share, but he didn't have to make each of us the way that he did. So we matter. And some of the work that we've done in motivation here, there have been some studies in the past that have proven that for children to be motivated in the right direction, they have to believe that they matter. Motivated in the right direction. Everybody's always motivated, but a child can be motivated to earn a C or an A. And if you're motivated to earn a C, it's really easy to be successful. So then you get that adrenaline jump and, the rest is history. So it's actually kind of really warped. But the research would suggest that when children value themselves and they value learning and they believe that their future can be bright, they're going to be motivated in the right direction for, pleasing a mom and dad, for serving at the nursing home, for, witnessing about Jesus to those who don't yet know him, et cetera. So I do love this idea. And then I would say to you, Wayne, and you can answer this if you want to, but otherwise it's just a thought-provoking something for people to think about. How does a child figure out that he matters? Like, you have 8 kids. How do they know they matter to you and your wife? How does a kid in a school or a Sunday school know that they matter? I think it's something that or you do, you know you don't.
Yeah,
It's important.
I love that, Dr. Kathy. I think that's a great maybe question for us to ask as parents. And matter is perceived emotion, right? I think that I matter to somebody,
A
and
perceived value.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Perceived value would be stronger, a better description of it. I do think that there's emotion that ends up being tied to it as a kid, right? They walk into the classroom with a smile on their face or their chest
Mhm.
out. But if they don't matter, they walk into the classroom maybe with hesitancy or with anxiety. I just think that there's a dynamic there. You talk a lot about this. How do we know our kids? And then do we have a hospitable presentation of the things that we're talking about, right? Do we teach our kids hospitably, thinking through their different smarts, thinking through the big questions that they have for the world? There was a Sunday school class that my son was in once, and I remember driving him home after it, and we were talking about it, and he said, I just don't know, Dad. I don't know. I'm not asking the questions that they're answering in class. And so I did like the classic dad splained thing. I just pulled them out of Sunday school. I said, well, then you don't need to go to Sunday school. You're going to go to Sunday school with me, and we're going to answer the questions you want to answer. You want answered, and you're going to be able to ask those questions, and let's dive into it. So for a season, it wasn't for like forever, but for a season, I really pulled him out because I wanted him to know, right, that he matters. And he walked differently into church and participates differently in church because I showed him that he matters, right? I think that's an interesting thing.
I love that, and let me get, practical in another way. That's a very practical insight for our listeners. Kids have said, when they know my name, I know I matter. When they call on me, I know I matter because they either want my opinion or they want to help me. So very practically, do we use their names? And if we don't remember their names, do we courageously say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I know we've met, but tell me your name again?" It's not realistic at the beginning of the year to know everybody's name immediately. And you have a friend who comes over to play with, one of your kids and you don't remember, just admit you don't remember and say you want to remember. And they're going to say, man, Billy's dad wants to know me. Like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that, Dr. Kathy. That's I really think the heart of God. The God reality is that God knows all these kids, and
Yeah.
He knows them by name. He knows them by the hair on their head. I mean, there's so many different scripture passages that reference how intimately God knows us, and I think that kind of goes to how I'd like to maybe shift this a little bit because there are some things at the ministry that we talk a lot about. And when we talk about even, I would say, maybe causing our kids or driving our kids to success metrics, some of the metrics that we like to consider rather than, scores on a test, um, different ideas in IQ, like college acceptance. We like to highlight these different qualities that come from Thomas Armstrong called the genius qualities. And the genius qualities, I'll just list them here, are wisdom, wonder, vitality, sensitivity, flexibility, curiosity, creativity, imagination, inventiveness, playfulness, humor, and joy. Now, I want to ask you, why do you like these qualities over some of the other success kind of high achieving metrics, to put those in quotes, that we should shoot for with our as parents and even as people that like kids and want to see kids, thrive and flourish and grow and do great things? Why should we highlight these metrics over others?
Really good. I think these are life metrics. I don't the purpose of school is the purpose of education is to prepare you for life, not more education. And we know people. I ask my audiences on a regular basis, how many of you know people who were successful in school and they're flunking life? Many hands go up. And how many of you know the opposite, where school was really hard and maybe an unfriendly, non-hospitable place for them, but they're acing in life, and many hands go up. Life matters. Now, so does education, obviously. But these qualities, to have wonder in life, to look around and go, wow, how many people live on my street that I don't know yet? For us to wonder how far does this guy go? Vitality and energy for life. And, now in school and in Sunday school, that is shot down often. Be quiet, sit down, sit still, look at me, eyes on me. And there's a place for that. There's a place for that type of attentive discipline in academic settings. But I want kids to have vitality where it's hard to stop them because life excites them. Flexibility, which is not yoga. Flexibility is not, muscle flexibility in his work. It's being able to go from one idea to another and back to the other and then to another. And that's how life is, right? Like, Wayne, you and I don't spell for 20 minutes and then read for 40 and then do math for 15. It's all integrated and it's just a mess. And so do we have that ability to be flexible in our thinking and curious? So I'm a fan of these because I think they are about life. I think that they are born into our children. If we were to look at young children, in fact, I've been to Africa. You've been in many countries as well, Wayne. When we look at children who have not been red penned, if I can put it that way, and sitting in desks for hours and hours, I think these are natural qualities of children. And I think that's God's intent. And I would love us to do the very best we can to get the children to still behave in these ways.
As Dr. Kathy talked today, it reminded me of a passage that comes out of Exodus chapter 31, and I'll begin reading at verse 1. Then the Lord said to Moses, "See, I have chosen Bezaleel, son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and I've filled him with the Spirit of God, with wisdom and understanding, with knowledge and all kinds of skills, to make artistic designs for work in gold and silver and bronze, to cut set stones and to work in wood, to engage in all kinds of crafts. Moreover, I have appointed Oloyahib, son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, to help him. Also, I've given ability to all the skilled workers to make everything that I've commanded for you." This is a really fun part of scripture. It's when God gives instructions for building the tabernacle. He calls people by name, Bezaleel and Oliahib. These aren't men who are priests or warriors or kings or known for their great exploits inside of the battlefield or also inside of culture. They're actually just people who are craftsmen. And God has filled them with his spirit, with the ability, with intelligence, with knowledge and craftsmanship. In ancient Near Eastern culture, a craftsman was really considered a laborer, somebody who worked for the service of the king. But here God dignifies the artistic and technical abilities as really spiritual gifts, things that he's bestowed on them that are essential for worship. Imagine the wonder of seeing gold and linen and wood transformed into a space where heaven and earth really meet in front of people. Their skill was not just useful, it was actually holy. God took delight in their attention to detail, and he gave them chances to expand those gifts by creating for his glory. I think as parents and people who really love kids, we can celebrate the makers in our home. If our kids spend hours building Legos or sketching or tinkering with wires, it might be really helpful to remind them that God made some of the most famous people in Scripture to be people who are creators. And that means that I think when our kids come home from school with messy homework or with other things, we don't need to necessarily call that out immediately, but we can highlight the things that God has put them in the world for, the friendships that they're forming, the way that they make their papers look beautiful during class because they're doodlers and they like to see things in pictures. And maybe we could even highlight the fact that they really have thought deeply about the things that teachers said, and we give them some space and time to process it, and then want to spend some time talking to them about it over their favorite hot tea or hot chocolate or maybe cold lemonade, whatever it is. I think when we nurture what God has planted into our kids, we join God in the unfolding of the story that he's already writing in our kids' lives. And I think in doing that, we give our kids a light that shines and cuts through the darkness that the world might cast on them because they don't feel like they fit in all the time. I think that's a big thing that we can do this week as we start in. And I hope that's an encouragement for you to do that, to celebrate the gifts that God's wired into your kids. A lot of the things in this podcast today can be referenced in some of Dr. Kathy's works, especially the Start with the Heart book, also 8 Great Smarts. If you're looking for ways to connect with your kids and how God has wired them uniquely and created them on purpose with a purpose for a purpose, those are 2 books that I think are great, 8 Great Smarts and Start with the Heart. You can get those over at our website at celebratekids.com. Now, I want to thank you for listening to the Celebrate Kids podcast, this daily segment, Face in the Dark. On behalf of Dr. Kathy Cook, my name is Wayne Stender. We're looking forward to spending the week with you here, and we're so thankful you joined us today.